everything costs so much money in this game, so it was all a bit of the unknown. There's more than one ways to skin a cat, as they say. Yeah, I think it's just a wonderful thing to be involved in. It got me fascinated and hooked.
Today, Art in Adelaide is visiting Willunga Glass Studio and talking with its owner Glenn. Hi Glenn.
How you going?
Tell us about your studio, how you started this beautiful space running.
Okay, so it's a long story, but we'll keep it as brief as I can. Back in 1989, I had a back injury. I used to work in the construction industry. So because of my back injury, I was forced to find another career path. Now, it was the first year that work cover actually was kicked in, so it was all a bit of the unknown. So the whole idea was to retrain in something you were interested in. So it was just coincidental that I'd started a Leadlight class to do some lead lights for myself. So I let a little bit of water go under the bridge, and then I approached my case manager, what about I pursue this idea of lead lighting? She thought that was a good idea, so that's how I started doing my lead lighting. So I worked from home for quite a while because I just didn't like the idea of being on work cover and having someone look over my shoulder continuously. And then I started to sort of outgrow my workspace at home, and this place was vacant for quite a few years prior to me moving in. So in 1995, I approached the real estate agent that was handling the property and started to move in here and do my work. And I had a really good landlord at the time. Because of my position that I was in, he allowed the first month's rent at a quarter of the rent over the period of 12 months, building up to the full tote odds of renting the space. So that was enabled me to come down here and start creating my work.
Glenn, could you tell us about this piece you're currently working on? As we might see, you incorporate different techniques to create this one.
Yeah, certainly. As I was saying before with the other pieces there, how interactive it is with itself. This is going to be a lead light window. This particular window is actually for myself. So the way we do a lead light is we have to come up with the pattern or the drawing. We cut the glass out over the pattern and then we assemble it back on the pattern. So where these black lines are, that represents the lead lines. So wherever there's a black line, that's where the lead lines will go, and that's what holds all the glass together. Now, as we discussed prior, how many different techniques, it's sort of endless what you can do. What I've done with this one is I've fused up some little pieces like this is going to be some of the bed of the river where the platypus is going. Now this is just use a couple of techniques by putting chips of glass on there, which is pretty self-explanatory. The weeds I've created by pulling out threads of glass under a flame, so it's called a stringer. So we cut little strips of glass off a sheet, heat it under a flame and pull or stretch the glass to the desired length and shape. Then it's a matter of laying those components onto the glass, heating it up, and the glass then becomes fused, or the decoration becomes fused to the glass. Hence, it enables you to create things that you could not create otherwise. Also, in this particular piece, we're having rocks down the bottom of the riverbed. So then again, well, I've created this by using chips or granules of glass to create the different shading, number one, but also we haven't fired it completely flat to fuse it in completely. It's nice to have, because we want to try and resemble a rock, to have that granulated effect on that piece of glass. So when this goes back together, it'll just have that little bit of difference, which just makes that window a bit more unique.
How accurate the size of the pieces of the glass should be according to that particular painting? Does it shrink or expand under the temperature?
Generally speaking, with a lead light, you're not using kiln-formed glass in it. I'm putting these different pieces of glass in because this window is actually for myself, so I've gone the extra mile with it. It has to be accurate when you start building the lead light, because if you start increasing over the line and where that piece of glass goes, you end up having lines that don't match up and you ruin the story of where the piece is going. So the actual cutting of it has to be very, very accurate. So the trick is we cut to the inside of that line. So here's a glass cutter. So if I was going to cut this piece of glass out here, we'd get the glass cutter, would line up with the glass cutter on the inside of that line, follow that line through, then we would break that out. Then we realign it to make sure we haven't gone wonky. And then when you finish cutting that piece out, that should fit inside the black lines like that.
How you transitioned from doing just LED light to full-on glass work?
I just found that I really enjoyed doing LED lights, and I had a bit of a knack for it, I suppose. Where I was getting my glass from, the guy that owned the Adelaide Glass Centre at that particular time, he had a kiln, which is a heating device to heat up glass or ceramics, and he showed me some glass bending in the kiln. It generates heat, but it also generates enough light that you actually physically see the glass bend. So from seeing that product being just that hard sheet of glass with sharp edges to seeing it become soft and bend, it got me fascinated and hooked. So then I started doing what's called fused and slumped glass, which is heating up glass in the kiln, fusing multiple layers together to create images, and or heating up and creating texture in just clear glass. And then some 20 odd years ago, I did a weekend workshop in the jam factory in town on glass blowing and became absolutely hooked with that. So I came home and I made a real primitive little furnace to start with and started to expand my skills in glass blowing. This might be a big statement, but I don't think there's another medium that's so interactive with itself as glass. It can be blown, it can be fused and slumped, it can be a lead light. You can create slumped glass into a lead light. You can fuse and slump glass, you can cut that up and blow it. There's probably two boundaries: imagination and budget. So when I started doing all this fused and slumped glass, I had all these offcuts. Now, everything costs so much money in this game. What do you do with those offcuts? That's where the glass blowing side really helped me and inspired me, because I started off melting down all my scraps and started making work with the scraps. It's gone on from there. Now I have to buy product in, but that's where it all originated from.
And speaking of budget, you mentioned at the beginning that you wanted to do that the whole career and not just to keep it as a hobby. How long did it take for you to transition from a hobby to the full-time career to get profitability and support to get that?
Well, that's a hard thing. Being profitable with any artist is virtually impossible. There's only a handful of artists actually so-called make it. I think I was on work cover for probably about 12 months to help me get established in what I was trying to do. And then I got off work cover and I just had to go, basically. You never make a great deal of money out of doing this, but there's more to life than money, and it's not hard to come to work, and if you can follow your passions, yeah, I think it's just a wonderful thing to be involved in.
What's the process of creation from this flat piece of glass to that three-dimensional textured plates? Or other products?
To create this, we started off with a piece of glass, not too much dissimilar to this, except it was obviously a diameter to make something round. But this is just a piece of window glass. Now, when people touch a piece of window glass like this, no one really wants to touch it because it's sharp, it can cut you, etc., etc. But when it goes into the kiln, because it gets hot enough, not enough to actually turn the glass to complete liquid, but it's hot enough to fuse pieces of glass together or create texture. So what we've done in this case, this piece here, that's going to be, or it is, a bird bath. So that has texture in it, and it's obviously in a curve or it's slumped. So this has undergone 2 firings. The first firing is to create the texture on the piece of glass. So to do that, whatever we want to look at in that piece of glass, we create that texture in the kiln out of refractable products, which means you can put anything in the kiln, but it can't burn in the kiln. So refractable means that it doesn't burn in the kiln. So the way I've created this texture is I've used vermiculite that's actually used in potting soil. That doesn't burn out in the kiln. So I've used finer pieces of the vermiculite. It's gone under the first firing, which is fired flat and smooth to create the texture. Then after that glass has been, or the kiln has annealed or cooled down slowly, the glass then has gone back in and been slumped into a mould. This has been slumped into a stainless steel mould. We use stainless steel because mild steel in a kiln, it shells or rusts. So as it gets hot, bits of metal pop off of the steel, but stainless steel can withstand the temperatures that we've gone to. You put a release on that stainless steel mould, which means the glass won't stick to it, and then that will slump and take whatever form that you're putting that piece of glass into for the mould. This piece is a little bit similar idea to this one. That's just had quite a simple texture applied to the glass, but that is so much more attractive than what that piece of hard, sharp glass is. With our fused glass, I mentioned before how interactive it is with itself. I've fused up this tile. It's pretty obvious what I've done. I've just cut little shapes out of the coloured glass, and for each one it's been cut twice. So there's 2 pieces there, 2 pieces there, all the way through. Then I've just got some black glass and cut thin strips at 6mm, stand the glass on edge, and then put the colour bits between it, and that's gone to the similar temperature to what that has done, and what that's done is fused all those pieces of glass to become one. Then just trying to show how interactive it can be with itself. In glass, the magic temperature is 500 degrees Celsius. If the glass is at 500 degrees Celsius, it's not cold enough that it can break, but it's not hot enough that it'll start to bend. What this piece is made for is called a technique of doing a roll-up. So what we do is we preheat that piece of glass to 500 degrees in a kiln. Then we take it out of the kiln at 500 degrees and get it stinking hot in the furnace. In the meantime, we've made a diameter on the blowpipe the same as that length. And what that enables us to do is when that's really hot, the diameter on the blowpipe will stick to this surface, and then you can actually roll that up and that edge will come round and join that edge, which then makes a cylinder. Then you close the end of that cylinder off. That gives you a bubble. Then you can get more glass over the top and make whatever shaped vessel you want to make out of that piece. That's how that was made.
So that's basically this style
is one
became
of them.
That one.
Yeah, that's the beauty. I like to do someone that's got a vertical line in it because you can't tell where the join is. That's been at the same temperature as that, but because it's different glass, it just shows you how diverse the medium can be.
You are not only doing your artwork in this studio, you're also hosting an artist collective here to support other local artists. Could you tell us about this initiative more?
Back in 2013, off the Slate gallery across the road, they were closing down for whatever reasons. Now, I'm very passionate about the cooperative. I was involved in probably the first cooperative that was in South Australia. And if I wasn't involved in that cooperative, I don't think I'd be doing this now. So back in 2013, Off the Slate moved in, and they just took a little bit of my showroom space to help fellow artists sell their work. And they increased more members wanting to join the gallery from Off the Slate. So then we came up with the concept that the members of Off the Slate, they required more space, more gallery space, because there was getting more and more of them. And we also heard people discussing that if there was more space available, more artists would like to join the cooperative. I reduced my workspace by a third. I used to do all my glass blowing in this space, but because there wasn't enough room to expand the gallery and keep the glass blowing, I renovated a shed and turned that into a studio at home where I do my glass blowing, and that enabled us to double the size of the showroom, which enabled the existing artists all to have more space out there, but also more artists join the gallery. And I think since we've done the expansion, I think we're about 10 more artists have joined that space, and it just gives people that opportunity to sell their work. But also they get involved with like-minded people, and we've got a great community of artists here.
Now we're standing at this colorful corner of the gallery where you display your artwork as a part of the other members of the collective, including these pieces we all previously talked about, and there are some over here, more of them on display. Is it your major place where you display your artwork?
Years and years ago I was a member of Glass. It's a group of glass artists throughout Australia, and they have a biannual exhibition every 2 years. And I exhibited through Glass plus other galleries in Sydney. I've sent my work to Queensland, again New South Wales, to Victoria just from individual customers, but I've exhibited in galleries in Adelaide as well. But now I only exhibit here, getting back to the whole concept of having the collective and the cooperative of artists. So to get my work now, I only really exhibit here. The trouble that you have when you start exhibiting interstate, you just can't send one piece of work. You have to have a body of work, or 3 or 4 pieces, or half a dozen pieces, etc. So when you start doing that all over the country, and that's another problem that artists have, there's a hell of a lot of money sitting out there in different galleries, because you have to make the work, so you have to come up with all the costs first. Then you've got to send your work or take your work interstate. Then you're relying on that gallery selling your work. So as we get older, I'm trying to work smarter, not harder. Hence the cooperative or the collective being involved in that. It eliminates all the shipping to galleries. I can still ship to individual customers if they need, but part of the big deal of having your own shop front is to try and get customers to come to you, not you go to them.
Apart from supporting local artists, creating arts locally, you are also accumulated a lot of knowledge and experience over these years. I'm curious about classes or workshops you run about.
Pre-COVID, I used to do quite a few workshops, but that sort of put a spanner in the works. So at the moment, I do Leadlight classes. I do a Leadlight and copper foil beginner's class and an advanced class. I used to have the advanced class and the beginner's class as separate, but I found that sometimes it's when someone starts something new and it's a little bit daunting for them. I found it probably better to have students that already made work involved with the beginners, because there's not only, I'm not blowing my own horn, but they're not only looking at what I do, they're seeing it's capable by people that have done just what they're trying to create 6 months ago or whatever themselves. So it makes it a bit more, they find it a bit more accessible to follow the projects and create their work.
And how many students you normally have in your class?
I try to keep the classes small, because I know when I did my Leadlight class, the minimum requirement was, I think it was about 12 or 15 to run the class. And I know myself that I saw students in that class, they just didn't complete their work, because there's just not physically the time during the class for the instructor or the teacher to go around and look after everyone with that amount of people. So I keep my classes relatively small. I have between 6 and 8 maximum, where sometimes the advanced students jump in and help the beginners. I don't have a problem with that, because there's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. And I just show people the way that I do things, not to say that's the only way to do it. When I first started doing this, the glass industry was a very closed shop, and no one wanted to tell or share their knowledge and experiences, which I found very frustrating. So the only way that I could learn was basically either doing small workshops, but mainly it was researching. This was way before anything was on YouTube or whatever. The old-fashioned way of researching books, putting stuff in the kiln and trying it. And the only way you find out is by your mistakes, really. You improve, you try not to make that mistake so many times. Glass is a very, very unforgiving medium. Things happen in glass that you can't explain from time to time, but that's just part of the medium itself. But like I said before, it's just endless what you can do with it.
Thank you, Glenn, for having us today and sharing your story about your passion and relationship with the glass work. I hope that everyone will find it fascinating and will come to your studio one day or even participate in your class.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. That all right?
Hope so.